Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Point? As my regular listeners know, I do this podcast because I believe that our purpose is what drives us. It's what ignites our passion, and our passion lets us achieve what we desire in life, and it is our path to happiness. And another part of what I believe is the essential need of persistence. So for me, purpose ignites passion, and it continues through persistence. That is the point I want everyone to take from my show. And my guest today is an incredible example of exactly that. Dr. Salvatore Forcina, how are you, sir?
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Thank you. Prior to recording, I've been given permission to call the good Dr. Sal, so I will do that. Sal is my pal. Sorry, bad pun.
Sure, perfect.
But Sal's story is one that just epitomizes my purpose principle. He has lived a life of purpose, which through his life has ignited passions, and boy, has he been persistent. So with that set up, just a very brief background. Sal was born in Italy during World War II.
Yes.
And we'll get into a little bit of his journey, but from Italy at the age of 8, his parents left because of the war and moved to Argentina. There's a long story of Sal's accomplishments in Argentina, and now he has been in the States for some time. And through all of that, he has ended up being not just a medical doctor, but a surgeon. And he's written a book called The American Doctor. We'll talk about all of that. But first, Sal, what prompted your parents to leave? Tell me the scenario. What was going on when you were 7 or 8 years old in Italy?
Well, at that age, the area where I was born in Scouris, between Rome and Naples, suffered the consequences of the World War II. And because of that, everything was destroyed. The family had been decimated, misery, and the German had left many mines in this valley where it was Scauri. Scauri is, in one side is the ocean, Mediterranean Sea, and the other side is the mountain, Arunci Mountain. So there is the valley that the Allied troop, they had to come from the south to go to north, but in the north, in the top of the area where the Monte Cassino was, a famous abbey, built in the year 500 plus, the German controlled that position, and they prevented the advance of the Allied troop for almost 6 months. And there were thousands on both sides, thousands and thousands casualties because of the war. So because people were desperate, my father used to work in a factory in Scauri, in ceramic, that make bricks and tile, and that was destroyed, partially destroyed. So this factory was going to open up a new one in Argentina and offer to the worker the opportunity to migrate.
Okay.
And so my father, that had developed an obsession about the war, he lost his brother, he lost his brother-in-law, his father had disappeared for many months, and they didn't know if he was alive or not, or he was a German prisoner that had been taken in Germany to work in the factory, whatever. So it was a terrible situation. And then, so that's why my father decided to, in 1947, to go to Argentina. And because Argentina at that time, there was no war, it's a very rich country, he thought that perhaps there was better to relocate his family there in Argentina. So that's why in 1949, my mother, myself, and my brother, I was 8 years old, my brother around 18 months or to less than 2 years old, we moved to Argentina. And that
Okay.
started the odyssey for us.
And quite an odyssey that is. So there's so much that your story brings to mind for me. One of which is in my travels, I'm always amazed at the number of people that I meet that are multilingual. Most of them are not Americans, by the way.
Yeah.
So moving from Italy to Argentina is one language change. How
Yes.
did that uh, happen for you? And use that to what I also want to hear from you is your education in Argentina. What your parents decided for your education.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened was that when I went to Argentina, I didn't speak Spanish. So of course, I was a second grade in Italy. I went to Argentina and they put me in first grade. So
Hmm.
already I lost 2 grades just there.
Hmm.
All right. So the psychological factors start to work in some way. Okay. So in Argentina, I studied in Argentina. But what happened was my father I was a worker, like my mother, and they had just second, third degree grade school. And but the reason why they got pursued the career because they were poor and they had to work. The family were very large family, and everybody had to pitch in to help because they were hard time. They have plus after the war was even worse. So anyhow, but my father, the main thing for him was for me and my brother to change course in life, to be somebody, to change it because he he saw the ad were all against him for instruction or whatever, but he read all his life, and he used to insist on me that I should study. I should study. Of course, I was a child of 8 years old, 10 years old. I mean, I didn't want to study. I just want to play in the street, kicking a ball in the street. And
You wanted to be a kid. You just wanted to
yeah,
play.
kids. I want to be a kid. And but that all changed when one day, not too far from my parents' house, there was a church, and some priest came to preach there, and I was around, and one of the priests showed me a booklet in which there were children riding a horse, a pony. There were children playing a creek in a river, and playing soccer and so on. So for me, at that age, early age, for me was something different. So I begged my father to allow me to go to the school, and that was a new experience in my life because that school there was a lot of discipline, and at that time I was some sort of rebel. It was against all that discipline, but little by little, in different way, I had to adjust myself. And my first year was very difficult. Was very difficult, excuse me, because, like I say, I don't have any motivation to study. And the main thing there was to study and to pray. And to me, at that age, was something difficult.
Mhm.
So I have hard time. I was in that school for 7 years. I was far away from. I went there when I was 11 years old. I was far away from my parents. It was a boarding school. I saw my parents once a year,
Oh boy.
and so that's separation anxiety, and we all have a rebellion instinct, but also we need some love and
Hmm.
some tenderness that a mother can provide. and I didn't have that.
Which doesn't mean that your mother and your father didn't love you, right? They
Oh
just
yeah, no,
they sacrificed their child being with them, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the benefit of your education and for your
yes,
upbringing to provide you things that they couldn't at
correct,
the
correct.
factory, right?
Because already they have sacrificed their life, living their own country, living their own family, their own roots, the language, the custom, and after the war, this was a matter of survival, and they want the best for their kids. It was no easy. It was a difficult situation, and they couldn't provide the education for me. As a matter of fact, when I was in Argentina, even when I was in university, I had to study without books. My parents couldn't afford the books. So what happened was when I went to was in university, my friends, I was the son of the immigrant, but the son of the immigrant without nothing,
Hmm.
no connection, no future plan, goal, nothing. I mean, because you are at the mercy of, it's like a small boat in the middle of the ocean at the mercy of the wind. That was my life. I
So
couldn't make.
let me ask you something about that. Sorry to interrupt you, Doc,
No, it's
but
okay.
um, we'll come back to your personal journey and university and med school and stuff. But what I want to ask you is, you were part of an immigrant family, arguably, maybe in a loose sense of the word, refugees, because you were leaving a war-torn country where
Yes,
what you had was taken from you through no fault of your own.
yes.
What is the experience of being an immigrant from your perspective and from your families, moving from someplace that it's impossible to live a comfortable, safe, happy life, but to move to someplace else and then to be not kind of, but to absolutely be an outsider as an immigrant?
Well, like I said before, first of all, you had to realize this happened more than 60 years ago, 70 years ago. And so the consequence of that, at that time, in that area, there was a lot of prejudice because we were not we were looking like you know, the animal instinct, you want to preserve your territory.
Hmm.
And that's the impression I got. And me as a child, I had the psychological factor. I don't have the clothes that my friend had. I don't have I didn't speak properly like they spoke. And when there was a party, I was all the time in one corner,
Hmm.
isolated, because psychologically they make you feel inferior at that early age. So that's why the desire for me to succeed, to work very hard, to be somebody, to get out of that hole. Seemed that my life was inside a hole, a dark hole, that I want to get out and see the sun.
Hmm. Okay. So, and part of the point of that is, you mentioned back then there was a lot of prejudice. Well, there still is,
Yes,
and it's
oh,
global,
that's
and
life.
it's
That's life.
yeah, a lot of it is life. A lot of it is learned behavior, though, which hopefully, through some education, we as a collective can drop some
Yes,
of our prejudice. But I did want to touch on that because being an immigrant is something I've never experienced, but it's certainly one of the topics of the day, not just in the U.S. but globally.
yes.
So now let's take you back to university. Sorry, you have to go back to school. So now you're
No,
back in
okay.
now you're back in university.
So anyhow, I went to university, and I went mainly there because my friends from school they were going to university. But so I asked my father, and he said, "Wow, that would be great. However, you know our limitations, and so we're going to help you as much as you can." And I remember my father and my mother. They said, "Well, Sal, you should go, and we're going to help you out. Even if you do 1 year medical school or second year, if you cannot finish because of the economic circumstances, you can be proud to be whatever you're going to be, and you're going to say, you know what? I went to university for 1 year, 2 years. So that's the reasoning how the thing was that the goal they want to achieve. There was such a limitation, and it was very sad. It was very sad because at that time, that, you're uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's when you need more encouragement. That you know, but you had to understand how that was the situation at that time, and that for me.
Well, your parents, again, I mean, part of the theme in your life from what we've talked about is the impact that your parents have had on you. And for them to say, especially them having a second and third grade education for them to have a son that's even going to university, but to say if you go and even accomplish 1 year, maybe two, think how much you've accomplished. That must have been such an amount of freedom for
Oh
you
yeah, oh yeah,
and encouragement.
yeah. And they were so proud. I mean, so proud because as a matter of fact, there was a time when my father became very sick before I went to the university, and they gave so much antibiotic that affect the intestine, and there's a term for that, pseudomembranous enterocolitis. Is the antibiotic affect the lining of the intestine and affecting absorption of the mineral and the food. So my father was very weak, debilitated, and this was when for many months. And then, so the friends, colleagues, other Italian immigrant also, they used to come to visit my parents, and they used to see my father in the condition that he was. And they say, "Man, why Sal? Sal should go to work like my father, be a worker, a manual labor." And so my father put the foot down and said, "No, if he wants to study, we will do anything to improve his condition." So that's the sacrifice they made.
That's an incredible sacrifice too. That is just absolutely incredible. So let me take another break. What I want to ask you is to when we spoke the other day, you made a beautiful analogy about your parents and how they had just a consistent impact on you. Um, Tell me again your analogy of your parents. I'm going to call it the drip method of
Yeah,
impact.
yeah, yeah. Well, what happened was that when I was young, in the summertime, we used to have dinner outside in the patio. And while we were having dinner, my father was irrigating because he had a regular job. Plus, in the evening and night, he used to sell vegetables with a cart, going around
Okay.
with a bicycle to make a living. And so what happened? He used to talk to me, and he used to talk to me, and many things that he told me, see his youth, I didn't understand. Eventually, I start to understand, and then, like I say, excuse me, his talking to me was something like a drip of water, a steady drip, a steady drip, steady drip in a rock. With 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, nothing's going to happen. When the long run, it's going to produce a hole. It's going to make a hole. And that's the fact that my father common sense approach to life produced on me. So that's why eventually, as I start to um, be more knowledgeable, I understand what the life was about. I appreciate more what my parents had done and the sacrifice they went through for me to become somebody.
And that by itself helps to clarify the reason I do this show. Uh, your parents, your father had a purpose, and that was driven to give their children a better life than they had. And they
Yeah.
were very patient and they were very persistent. And that
Yes.
persistence had an impact. So the patience and the persistence, but the commitment to not changing their purpose, they changed how they went about it.
Yeah.
And their passion would sway and move in different directions. But at the end of the day, their purpose was to do everything they could for their children, which is what ignited their passion to keep them going. And they were patiently persistent. And here
Yes.
you are now, a doctor.
So I remember my father when he he was frustrated because I will not study. I will not, So he used to show me his hand. He said, "Look at my hand here, full of callus. This is what you want to be. This is what you want to be in the future." And he used to be mad. And he said, "One day you're going to regret this.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to regret this." And so, like I said, that's the dripping, the water drip constantly, in one way or another. There was an analogy, there was something that they keep that, there was a fire inside him. And
Mm.
that little fire was not was covered by ashes, but just with a little bit of blow, produced a flame. And that's what happened in the way he tried to talk to me, to be an example to me, and to teach to me.
Well, I tell you what, the people that know me know I'm prone to use analogies, and I love yours. I love yours about the flame that was inside, the covered in ashes, and blown into a fire that drove him. Well, okay, now you have to go back to university again. Sorry, you have to keep going back.
Well,
Tell me, uh, what did it take to get through university and to get your medical degree? And how long a process is that, and how did that come about?
medical school was 7 years in Argentina at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, I studied at La Plata, close to Buenos Aires. Excuse me. And then what happened, this was very difficult for me because, first of all, the student, the university over there at that time, I don't know today, uh, mostly the well-off people went to the university because some of them went there to learn, to study. But a lot of them, they went because they had a lot of money, well-off. They went there perhaps to get a piece of paper to call
Hmm.
themselves a doctor, a lawyer, and so and then another group was there to have a good time, enjoy life. So what happened was I was sharing this room. Well, there was a house. We were like maybe 10, 12 people there sharing. And I shared a room with another student. And those people, the weekend, on Friday, they used to go to Buenos Aires, spend the weekend there to have a good time because they had the opportunity, they had whatever. So that was the time when I used to borrow their books because, well,
Okay.
because like I said before, the books were very expensive, and my parents couldn't afford to buy me books. So what happened was that was the time I borrowed the books. I make note or whatever, and to me it was a welcome opportunity because beside, first of all, there was no noise in the house because I was the only guy there. Okay, and second, I had the opportunity to have my books.
That's pretty incredible how things work, and it also points out that one man's junk is another man's treasure. That whole
Yes,
thing where you
yes,
know
yes,
they're off having fun, and you were able to take advantage of that opportunity
yes,
to
yes, yeah.
it's
Well,
brilliant.
another way you have to be hungry. You have to be
Yeah.
when you're hungry, you will do anything to survive. And I thank my parents that they gave me the determination to succeed. Uh, For the listener, I will mention that my life was not, I was not all the time the hero. No, I was a regular guy that many times I fell. I went into my knees, fell down on my knees, and I cried. And there was many times where uh, everything seemed to be dark, that there was no future for me, and I was ready to quit. But for some reason, the fact that I don't want to disappoint my parents, that stimulated me to keep going, keep going. But there were moments that I didn't see my life was, like I say, going through the tunnel. Where I saw a dim light at the end, and I going through the tunnel alone because I didn't have any guidance. And I right there at the light, and there was a sign that said dead end. And so you had to go back, start all over again. And so that was my life. That's what is behind. So that's the reason why this book came about, because if I succeeded, I want anybody to have faith, keep working. It's not going to be easy. Nothing is easy, but you can make sure you're going to succeed in some way or another.
Well, that's brilliant. So my guest today is Dr. Sal Forcina, and he is the author of the book, The American Doctor. And I'm glad you got to the book because what that story encapsulates is what we've been talking about. What you just said, we all have to embrace. It's not an easy path. It's not just a glide up the mountain of success or happiness or whatever. There are stumbles, there are falls, and there's times when we have to reconnect to our purpose, even at the most basic level. And in your case, at times, your purpose was as basic as I don't want to disappoint my parents as much as they've done for me.
Yeah,
And
correct.
it wasn't, boy, I've got to go because I've got to be a doctor. I mean, that's part of it. I understand. But your faith, you're on your knees crying, turned to, I've got a purpose of not disappointing my parents, and you prayed and you regathered yourself. That's why the book, The American Doctor, is one I want people to read.
Yeah. I can say something about why the American Doctor came about.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. First of all, in the whole country, this was the time when there was no radio, there was no television. To be a doctor, to be a priest, to be a judge, a lawyer, there was a big thing. When you walk in the street, people remove the hat and bend the sign of respect. So that's why to be a doctor at that time, for me, plus to be a doctor in the United States, being the chief of surgery in 2 hospitals. Besides that, I want to add more. American Doctor, my mother ended up being in the hospital when she was 95 years old. She had a stroke. And over there, the hospital, when I was called, I flew there, and I saw my mother, the condition. First of all, my mother, suddenly, she was paralyzed one side, and she received an intravenous for nutritional supplement just during the day. During the night, there was no. Besides that, she was placed in a place where there was another lady who was coughing constantly, had pneumonia. So all that, being a doctor, and this being my mother, I was going crazy. So now what happened, one day, after long, I used to go twice a day to the hospital. After lunch, I went there, and the IV infiltrated in my mother's hand. The hand was all swollen up, and the liquid had wet the entire sheet, the sheet. So I called the nurse, I said, yeah, we were going to take care of it. The time was passing by, so they were not taking care. So I took this situation into my own hand. I fixed the problem. And when one of the nurses came, she started to yell at me. I said, well, you know what happened? You really put your finger in the fire because no, really, because this is what do you think? I'm coming from the third world country. I say I'm a surgeon. I'm a chief of surgery in the United States, and this is my mother. This is the way you. Well, anyhow, to make a long story short, eventually she left. After a little while, a doctor came, and he was very apologetic. He was from that day on. The nurse used to say, "Here is the American doctor."
Okay.
When they saw me, I didn't have a name, but I was the American doctor.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
Yeah,
And there was the title of your,
believe me, again, I talk about stress because I mean, you know, I couldn't believe things, you know. But I saw there, not to criticize, family waiting all day for the doctor to talk to somebody. You think that routinely I did surgery. When I did my surgery, I used to talk to the family before the surgery and after the surgery. But that was a different time, I guess. A different.
well, that doesn't have to be a different time, though. I mean, to me, fortunately, I've not personally gone through situations like that, but I certainly have loved ones, family, my parents, my mother specifically, where we didn't have that type of uh, caring and empathy from the doctor, much less the surgeon, because you
Yeah.
know how you surgeons are,
Sure.
most of you with
Yes.
that
Yeah,
big
different
ego.
personality. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So now you're the American doctor, and just somewhat briefly help me understand how you graduated medical school in Argentina after 7 years, and then you became ultimately the head of surgery for two different hospitals in the U.S. How did that jump take
All right.
place?
I'm going to fill up the gap there. After I graduated I got my MD in Argentina. I decided to go to Italy to specialize. But when I went to Italy and I was there during the summer, I didn't like the system. I didn't like the system. I say, uh, I, I said, this is not for me. If I'm going to sacrifice my life, I want to have a beautiful future, a better future. So while I was on the beach every day there talking to people, some distant relative of mine say so they knew about my situation. And I say, son, you should come to the United States. What are you doing here? You know? And so I have family here. I got in touch with my family. They knew what we were doing. They invited me to come here. So I came to the United States. So now, here we are. First of all, my degree was not recognized here.
Mm.
Second, I didn't speak English. Third, I never saw multiple choice in my life. I was 28 years old, talking about all the ads against you. So now I had to pass an exam, of course, given in English, for a foreign graduate doctor. And after you pass the exam, if you succeed, that's a very difficult exam. If you succeed, this exam allows you not to practice, but to apply to the hospital and specialize in whatever you want. I specialize in surgery, and it took me another 5 years.
Mm.
Of course, after you finish the specialty, already I was maybe 35, 36 years old. I didn't have any money. I had debt, and nobody knew me. Nobody knew me. Who is going to come to me?
Hmm.
And so now I start another escalation of this mountain, climbing this mountain. So what happened? I had the opportunity in one occasion that the chief of surgery needed help. So I went there to help. And so I guess he saw something on me that impressed him. And so from that day on, every time he had the cases, he make sure that his secretary called my office for me to assist him. And when he went in vacation, I was covering him.
Wow. Okay.
So I can tell you human nature. One day, my office was called to see a patient that belonged to the chief of surgery. It was his patient, but he was on vacation. So I went to see this patient, and from the beginning, just as I get into the room and introduce myself, there was a barrier, an ice barrier between him and me. Well, to make a long story short, this gentleman had a very hot, infected gallbladder. And that had to be taken care of because the poison will go into the circulation and have a septic shock and so on and so on. So I explained to him, and I said, listen, you cannot wait for the chief to come back, whatever, in 1 week, 10 days. This is something had to be taken care of. He said, well, doctor, okay, let me talk to my family. Let's see. We see. So, of course, I was worried about him. So the following day, before I went to the operating room early, I went to see him. And to my surprise, the wife was there, the daughter was there, the family member of the family were there. And so he saw me, he said, Dr. Forcina, good morning. This is my wife, this is my daughter, this is so and so. When are we going to do the surgery? I said, wow. I said, inside myself, I said, what happened here? So I went to the head nurse. I said, listen, what happened from yesterday to today? This is a big change. Oh, Dr. Forcina, you don't know how after you left yesterday, he talked to everybody, any nurse, anybody, the people that they were passing by. I went to a room and he was asking about you. Well, of course, I have a very good reputation. The guy that care. I care about my patient, and the results were good. And so the nurses are the best advertising for you because they see the result. So anyhow, I did the surgery, everything went well or whatever. So that's one of the episodes I can tell you how I had to climb the ladder one step at a time.
Again, just reinforcing what we talked about earlier in the episode, Dr. Sal Forcina. I talked when you moved from Italy to Argentina, the language barrier, and I'm glad you brought it up because the next thing obviously is the language barrier. So now now you speak Italian, now you speak Spanish, and now you're in the U.S. trying to figure out English.
Yes.
That in and of itself is a bigger challenge than many of us face.
Yes, because first of all, I had to go to New York University to take courses in English. I didn't have any money. My family were good enough, gentle enough, and carry to lend me the money to study. And I did that. English is no average English because what happened, I had to prepare for those exams. Those exams for me, they were nightmare. Still today, sometimes I woke up with the anxiety because I have a nightmare about those exams. Those exams, talking about law of faith, I say, how am I going to pass those exams? Because I didn't understand the logic. When first time I went to New York City to take the exam, there were people talking there. I didn't know what multiple choice was. Imagine. And so what happened? And they say, well, no, the answer is there. And I inside myself, I couldn't figure out how the answer is going to be there. I didn't have no idea. So what happened was, as a matter of fact, while they were taking the exam, I didn't know it was a timing either. So what happened? I used to get up, I used to go and have a drink of water or whatever, because my head was I was not used to that, the
Hmm.
stress and this and that. So eventually, the first time I took the exam, they say the proctor say you have half an hour to finish. I have half an hour. I haven't even done half of the test. So imagine I panic and I start to guess and A, B, D, C, C, whatever. Of course, I flunk. I flunked that. So imagine the depression. You have to wait for several months for the result. And so I had to start again. I was still staying with my uncle and aunt in their house. I was more than almost 30 years old, whatever, 31, whatever. And so I felt a lot of pressure, a lot of things, because you say, God, that's when I talk to God.
Mm.
But so many times I say, God, please give me a chance, because I didn't have an access. I couldn't. I sometimes that's what I'm saying. Being down. Sometimes I was really down,
Hmm.
but I was. I didn't know what to do, because here. I was nobody. I was nobody. In this country, I was nobody. In Argentina, I was nobody, and in Italy, I was nobody. So
Uh,
it was very difficult, traumatic experience.
well, English is a tough enough language to learn, and when you add into that medical terms,
Yeah,
and then you add into a style of testing that you hadn't been experienced with multiple choice. Believe me, myself and probably a lot of my listeners too have done let's do the C, C, A, B, and
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
yes, and with the same results that you had. So I think that's incredible that you did that. But again, it's persistence, and part of our persistence comes from faith. And when you said, "God, give me a chance," my belief is that that's exactly what you were being given. We just sometimes want the chance to be the way we want it to turn out, and we
Yes.
have to again get back to that persistence. Um, so I want to be respectful of the time that you've committed to me, and thank you for that. I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. I am
Thank
learning
you.
so much.
Likewise. Thank you.
And those of you on YouTube, I just keep having the impression as I look at Sal's frame here, you just look like a doctor. You look like a doctor that I would want to go talk to and listen to, and especially when you have that smile going. So yeah, it's been a
But
great time.
but you know what? It's not a doctor. I care.
Right.
I care. In my last 15 years, I did the general surgery, I did trauma, and I did vascular, peripheral vascular. But the last 15 years of my practice was mostly advanced laparoscopy. Everything is done through a small hole with a video. And so what happened, most of those patients, major surgery, and those most of those patients went home the same day.
Hmm.
I used to see the patient, like I said, I used to see the patient before the surgery, after the surgery, and before they were discharged.
Hmm.
And at 10 o'clock at night, before I went to sleep, I used to call their house to make sure everything was all right. And the following morning, before I went to the operating room, I will make sure to call them again, just in case there was some additional question, misunderstanding about whatever, okay? Because I care, and also to prevent any stress, anxiety, because the family having a surgery, major surgery, there's a lot of stress for the patient and for the
Hmm.
family. I know that.
Well, so what you just said brings to my mind two things. First, the genuine caring, the genuine empathy of as best you can realizing what the patient and the patient's family is going through and doing what you can to help ease some of that, I think is an incredible trait that we could all use more of in the medical field and beyond. But the other thing, coming back to just kind of a general, whether it be medicine or life or business, whatever, people on the show always know I talk about value and adding value, and value is something you give that's a little bit something extra. And the first law of the go-giver is that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than take in payment. So what the heck does that mean? Value is free to give, and can be free to give, and that story exemplifies it, Sal, where the value you were giving was they were expecting a surgery and a good surgery and a perfect result. What you gave them over and above that was caring, the peace of mind before surgery,
Yeah,
the caring and peace of mind after surgery, the follow-up. All of that is what value is. And
yeah,
so they wanted a surgery. They got surgery and caring and made to feel like they mattered as a human. That's a great example of value. So thank you for that.
sure. I want to add, if you allow me, I remember I was 72 years old and I decided to retire because unfortunately the energy, it
Hmm.
seems that at the end of my career when I was having all the emergencies in the middle of the night, and there were many nights I couldn't sleep. The emergency room keep calling me, and I had to take the surgery emergency during the night, my surgery during the day, the office hour. There was a time when I was thinking I was going to have a heart attack. And so what happened is that eventually I decided to retire. And when you retire, you have to have send notification to all your patients. So they were my office did. Well, I really no, I really appreciate and understood what love was about for they reciprocate that love to me when they find out I had to receive the letter and they were running to the office bringing cake and pastry and all the things and say why you had to retire, what are we going to do, because I have been doing this for more than 40 years, so I had done the surgery in the parents, the children, the grandchildren, and so that was what the what really shocked me up was at the end when people show you the love and appreciation.
And that's what comes from the type of approach to life you've taken. So we've talked a lot. We've taken you from Italy to Argentina to the U.S. to all sorts of schooling and experiences. Ironically, and I'm sure it's complete accident, but those watching on the YouTube channel, behind you is the map, and the whole time we've been talking, I can see Italy, I can see
Yeah,
Argentina, I can see the U.S. So it's been like this little capsule of your geographic journey. But at
yes.
the end of all of that, Sal, tell me and tell my listeners from the perspective of someone who's had the purpose and the passion and the persistence and the success and the love given and the love received by yourself, what's the point?
Well, the point is that, I think we all have a purpose in this life. We are here in this life for a purpose, but our life goes back, transcorre very fast. So you have to do the best to, like building a house, you have to put one brick at a time. The experience is different from one person to another. But what happens is that if you achieve a goal and you have the desire and somebody put the parents or the teacher or the coach or whatever stimulate that inner desire to be somebody, this is a plus in life. Because the word thing is the waste in food, waste in energy, waste in the mind. The waste is a terrible thing because a productive life can accomplish so much. And look at the technology, just the technology. The fact that I'm looking at you, at a distance and talking, all right? 50 years ago or whatever was inconceivable, something like that.
Mhm.
And so that's why we all have a purpose, and we had to follow the purpose to improve. In my field, I was happy because after I accomplished whatever I accomplished, I gave hope to many people and saved many lives. And I'm proud of that.
As well, you should be. Dr. Sal Forcina, author of The American Doctor. Buy that book, get the full story of this incredible man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your giving, not just to myself and my listeners today, but through your 82 years of caring and giving. I appreciate you, and thank you again for sharing such a powerful story.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate our conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.